Oh, people.
Evening.
Oh, and you too, Carl.
Nelson, if it was anybody,
Yes, I
but I'd almost be, ah, I would almost be upset, but it's you, so yeah, it's okay.
did. It doesn't matter. Yeah. I hope everybody is well. Rachel, what the heck are you doing up? Don't you realize it's 2 o'clock in the morning where you're at?
I do. I do. I just came home from work, so I thought I stay a little bit awake longer. So
Goodness. You are a glutton for punishment.
what?
You're a glutton for punishment.
Yeah.
Interesting. I went to the grocery store the other day, and there was a lady there that works there that I've seen, and she gave me this. I don't know if you can see what it is,
Hmm.
but
Very cool.
it's a coin.
Yeah, it's a challenge coin. Dennis collects those, but that's a
Yeah,
cool one.
I've got a number of them.
Yeah,
Yes,
that's cool.
thank you for service. Your nation proudly salutes you. That was, yeah, we didn't get that coming back from Southeast Asia. Spence, there you are. How are you?
I'm muted. I'm doing good. Yeah.
Good.
Almost back to, I'm almost off of island time.
Okay. Yeah. Kind of nice to be on island time for a while, isn't it?
Yeah, it was really nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you did a heck of a job with Mr. Kino there. So
I'm so embarrassed that I kept calling him Keenan for 9 days.
I don't think he knew the difference.
He didn't seem to mind.
No, he didn't care. He's a Malamute.
He wasn't listening anyway.
No,
I don't think he noticed.
no. Hi, Shelley.
How are you?
Peachy. So two of the three students in just the recently finished course 2. That was a great course 2. You guys that was actually enjoyable for me too. A heck of a job.
Really nice.
Are you saying that the class 2 I was in wasn't enjoyable? I mean,
that's not what I'm saying. I wouldn't dare say that.
how many classes have you had which you have been able to go chase a dog chasing a cow?
2 in a row. The same dog. 2 different. Yeah. 2. Yes. Just 2, and it was the same dog. See ya. So there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was her name. See ya. And she meant it. See ya. Oh, goodness. Okay, guys. Well, I was going to give a couple of minutes there. Hope everybody's doing well. The apocalypse hasn't happened, so I guess we'll have to carry on here. At least yet.
God.
Okay. Let me find my notes here. So this one, I don't have any visual aids here for it, so you're just going to have to listen to me. So I kind of, on this one, this is tactical and strategic, and what that means basically, it's survival, behaviors, and language implications. And being tactical and strategic is that I hope this helps you to understand dogs from their standpoint a little better. I mean, that's the whole purpose of these educational Zooms anyway. So looking at it from their standpoint, how they see things, and how I've been able to understand what they're trying to communicate, or even if they're not directly communicating, what their behaviors actually mean in terms of communicating how they see things, how they feel, what they're doing, what they're about to do, which is very important. So seeing into the brain of the dog by their understanding of things, and that's the whole point of all the classes, is to understand dogs better. Because if you're working with dogs or you're living with dogs, it helps to know what a dog is. And I find a lot of people have no idea what a dog really is. So no offense to anybody here, but so so let's get into this. So what does tactical and strategic mean? And really, what are so tactical. So let's look at short term versus long term, because tactical is more of a short term situation, and strategic aspects are if you consider them long term. So tactical is relating to or constituting actions carefully planned to aim at an end beyond immediate action. So in other words, what's happening immediately, the tactical aspect is to get to the end of a particular incident, element, whatever, this immediate action, and get to an end of it with hopefully a better outcome, obviously. So it's planning for a gain of a better or predictable or survivable outcome in that moment. So tactical is it can be a tactical thing is it's like the old saying, every battle plan is perfect, battle plan is strategic until you meet the enemy. That's tactical. So right in the moment of when you meet the enemy, it becomes tactical as far as your survival aspects and what happens on the battlefield, so to speak. So from that standpoint, now this isn't relating necessarily to conflict. It's the way that dogs think. So let's look at this. Okay, so tactical is gaining survivable experience. And that's number one. Okay. Number two is they're evaluating comparative experiences. So the brain itself is pattern seeking. All brains are pattern seeking. And so to be able to survive from moment to the next moment, you have to have comparative values of what's better, what's worse, what answer was a better solution. And that's really what the pattern seeking is for. And once you get into something that seems to have worked, then you're going to try to repeat that, but then refine it. And then that becomes the tactical aspects of things. And that's true for humans or anything. And again, this doesn't have to be combat oriented, but it helps to understand the predatory mind. So Then the third thing is testing the levels and times. Now, what does that mean? Okay, so what is a level? So the level of testing, first of all, so testing the levels of tactical aspects. In other words, what is necessary for this particular moment, incident, environment, et cetera, et cetera. And the thing about going over, which humans are great at, you know, why humans go over in their reactions and emotions and sounds and everything else? Because generally we are safe. We don't have to worry about our survival in an immediate sense because of our quote unquote civilization. And we control almost all environment that we set our foot in. That's so we don't worry about standing out above the crowd anymore and being noticed by a big predator or noticed by the prey that we're going after, because the prey we're going after is McDonald's fries. Okay. So, um, well, I, I, I use that as an example for, you know, the whole thing of we we don't think in terms of um, having to go hunt something down, run it down, kill it, carve it up, serve it however we serve it. We don't do that as a species that much anymore, certainly in we'll call it in Western cultures. So we don't think of it in terms of that. So the the response levels, and that's where dogs test, is it just enough and no more? And that's one of my sayings all the time is how do you respond to a dog's behavior? It's just enough and no more. Because if you overdo it, it doesn't make sense to the dog. So when you get upset, angry, overexcited, emotional in any way, that's weakness to the dog. You cannot control yourself, is what you're saying. So the tactical aspect of learning, especially, you know, puppies learn it first, and we'll get into that. But you know, what they're doing is they're seeing where that level is that makes the perfect tactical response. And so they're wanting a survivable and better outcome. And if you overdo it all the time, now the dogs that a lot of trainers get anymore are they over respond, and that's their behavior issues. And that's why they need trainers because, you know, they over respond to humans, to other dogs, you know, reactive dogs, et cetera, because they live in an environment with humans that is unnatural to them, unnatural to their brains. I'll put it that way. Okay. So those testing levels, first of all, the level required, and then testing itself to see where is this response? What's this tactic that I need to use for a better outcome? And sometimes, depending on the personalities of the dogs, and we'll get a little bit more into this, personality of the dog determines what it specifically tests against, as well as because some dogs don't care about certain levels of things, other dogs, other humans, whatever else, but then it goes a little overboard at other elements that it doesn't understand, it doesn't agree with, etc. That was actually Kino coming into class. He over tested things. He was a butthead. He, you know, bumped into people, you know, pushed them out of the way. He was using his size, you know, 120-pound Malamute. And he liked to use his teeth to disagree. And, you know, within a couple of days, 3 days, he was a different dog because he was getting a different response. And he recognized how much better that was. And we were also communicating to him in a way that for the first time he understood from humans. So, you know, he became a very happy go lucky, gave it all up dog. He didn't have to be in charge anymore and he didn't disagree with anything. So There you go. So what level of testing does a dog do? Once again, it's related to the personality and temperament of that dog, the experience that it has survived on up to this point. So, dogs simply have their experience. If they have a deprived environment or a rich, enriched environment, that depends upon how much interaction, different interfaces, different environments that they encounter, live in, survive, test, and are able to come up with a good answer that that they see as a better way to survive. So if a dog's personality is about we'll say it's used to its size or its ability to use its forwardness and push against people, and I don't mean physically, but sometimes physically too, people or other dogs, and assert themselves as now I'm in charge, I disagree, type thing. If they get used to that, if they've been successful at that, that's where they go with it. So if they had other types of experiences that prevented them from doing that, that they were unsuccessful at it earlier on, especially in a softer way, but emphatic, um, then they wouldn't have gotten to a more severe level in the first place, even with that type of personality. Much like Kino found out that he didn't have to do all of that. We disagreed with him, but it was not what you think it would be. It'd be an extremely low level, constant communication of, no, that's not going to happen. We've got your back, buddy. And that was really it. That was the intent behind it all. So, uh, okay. So the other part of testing levels and times is, when is it appropriate to respond? Because not everything needs a response one way or the other. We go back to agreement, disagreement, and you have tacit agreement and tacit disagreement. In other words, so with agreement, we're actively agreeing with something. We're letting a dog know. When a dog jumps up and down in excitement and we do the same, we respond to it in kind in some way. We are actively agreeing with that excitement level, play, whatever it is. And remember, that dog is a predator. So what it's asking for in excitement is a predatory type of mentality. When we think of play, we have specific rules for humans in a type of play that dogs also have rules for specific types of play. But their ability to, with their teeth and their claws, to hurt us because our skin is like butter compared to theirs, they don't understand that. So the excitement can be damaging to you in different ways. And then people get upset. Well, you enjoyed it. You joined the dog in their excitement, or you elicited that excitement yourself. So what level of tactical aspect, and everything is tactics when you think about it. Every interaction is a tactic. How are we going to get along? Because that's really what it's about. Other tactical aspects from a predator prey standpoint are, how do I gain an advantage? Okay. So when it's partnership, it's how do we get along and how do we support each other? How have I got your back and how have you got my back? When it's predator prey, then how do I as prey get advantage, or as predator, sorry, get an advantage over prey? And there's a number of ways, obviously. We have technologies and all of this, but speed, power, tools, all these other things. So that's really what they're testing on the tactical side is, When is it appropriate? When's it appropriate to have any say-so? Does it involve you? Just because you're around doesn't mean it involves you at all. It doesn't need to have a response. So if you do nothing with another action, you are tacit, either in agreement or disagreement. Because if a dog comes up to me and tries to elicit, an excitement or something else, and I simply turn my head away, I am tacitly disagreeing with that because I am not giving that feedback to agree with that excitement. I'm not joining it in the excitement. So that's a tacit disagreement. If if a dog is putting its head in the food bag and eating and you do nothing about it, you are tacitly agreeing with that. Okay. So, and then active disagreement is, moving forward, stopping the action, changing the brain of the dog, making it think something different than what it's thinking or doing at the moment. So that's a disagreement. Okay. So those are the active appropriate, and you have to study what is appropriate to be actively agreeing and disagreeing, and what's appropriate to be actively or passively agreeing or disagreeing, because dogs study that all the time. Okay. If they're comfortable in an environment, they are tacitly agreeing with it. If they become uncomfortable, then they're tacitly disagreeing by removing themselves, etc. In other words, they have no direct action against it. They remove themselves, they go off, they crawl under something, they go away. Or they simply stand there and let it pass. Okay. So this is all depending upon the personality and temperament of the dog, because every dog is different. Every animal has a different pattern in their brain, because all brains are different. There is not one single brain that is identical to another brain anywhere ever in the history of Earth, because there are, literally billions upon billions upon billions of combinations of how those neurons and how those cells go together. Okay. So we could talk for hours about different personalities and temperaments of dogs, and they're as numerous as there are as humans' temperament and personalities. So each dog that you see is a study in its own. And I've never, I have personally, I don't know how many letters I have behind my name with degrees and titles and all that stuff. I've never met a dog that cares about one single letter, ever. It's always that dog that you're working with now. Now, let's talk about tactical from the human standpoint. Okay. So the human standpoint is, if you've worked with 10,000 dogs, understanding each one of them in categories, basically, and saying, okay, this dog is kind of in this category, but I've still got to find out who that individual is. Because if you're not humble enough to say, I need to know who you are, it's going to surprise you. So, okay. But we got a wide range of, for instance, in the class we just had, we had a wide range of personalities of dogs. We had a puppy mill German Shepherd, sweet dog, truly sweet soul, but she was still able to bring the German Shepherd out in her against a very lively and popular girl type Siberian Husky personality female. And it took her a few days, but she finally went, okay, that's enough, bitch. oh, oh. And it was just a slight incident of, she moved forward and showed her gums and little tiny, tiny growl, like, that's enough. You've pushed your way far enough. So we had the popular girl in high school, that's the cheerleader and all pretty, batting her eyes at everybody. That was the Siberian Husky female. And we had the puppy mill dog, who was fearful and certain, certainly about humans, very comfortable with other dogs. And then we had the Malamute, who was a pushy butthead because of his size, and that's what he was used to, who became actually the most powerful in terms of pack orientation and looking out for the other dogs and humans in that whole group. So those are three massively different personalities that showed up. And so you got to learn each one of them. In that, again, testing levels, it's the learned behaviors of the dog. So they bring with them learned aspects from being a puppy, working with their siblings. Who crawls on top? What's that feel like? Who is underneath? Who bites my ear? Do I hop off of something onto a sibling? All of these things that they're learning constantly, that brain patterning and behavior, and then continuing on from that. So they're testing levels and times of tactical aspects. That's what play is about with puppies. That's what all these other positionings are. So from another area, so new or never before experienced elements that they run across. So how do they do that? So first of all, what's the level of perceived threat? Dog in a new environment. We talked about last time about, basically neophobia, the fear of new things or uncertainty about new things. And if it is, first of all, the level of newness or difference makes a huge amount of difference. If a dog is never just like us, if you've never stood out, in your front yard and had a UFO come and land next to you 5 feet away, well, that's a different experience, isn't it? That's something that's way out of so your fear, your comprehension of things, it just doesn't make sense to you. No, I've never had that happen to me. So just wanted to clarify. But that's the way some things happen with dogs, that they've never experienced a certain environment before. It's like, well, Cassandra, the German Shepherd, puppy mill dog. She'd never been to Home Depot or, Academy Sports or Tractor Supply or any of the other places we took her. So that was like an alien landing next to her. But she handled it well because she relied on us as the base. So she relied on us to say, this is okay, let's show you around. And she was able to encounter that in a different way than she would have had she just been thrown in by herself, or maybe with just one person. She had 2 other dogs and 4 people with her. So what level of perceived threat? Number one. So what's that level of difference of experience versus the new experience? What's that level of perceived threat of that? Is it loud? Is it noisy? Is it faster than you can imagine? Does it come at you? Is it animated? Is it a physical thing that doesn't move but makes noise? I mean, all of these things that dogs have to study, understand, and remember that their senses, it's not about the eyes. The eyes and the ears and the feeling of a dog and the taste and mouth and all that is to reinforce how the brain senses things, which is through the nose, through scent. Our eyes are supported by our mouth, our nose, and our ears, and our touch and feel. That's our brain is structured, through the eyes. We are eye dominant in the brain, and everything else supports the information the brain is trying to receive from the eyes. With dogs, it's the nose. So it's all about scent. So encountering the eyes, they have to corroborate things, levels of things, through the nose, and how the brain encounters things through the nose. Okay, that's what morphology means of what is brain dominant. Okay, so the next thing is immediate action necessary? And that depends again on perception of, this is again new or never before experience. So is immediate action needed on their part if they perceive a threat, if they've never encountered it before, if they're a fearful dog, if they're an uncertain dog, if that surprises them, if it's loud, a sharp, loud thing, if it moves quickly all of a sudden, all those things, then immediate action is necessary on their part. And that's a tactical thing. So if they've never encountered it before, what happens when they do something and survive it? Then that becomes their base level go-to action. So think about that in terms of how dogs are reactionary. So they've never experienced something before, and the first time they bark loudly and lunge at it, and it runs away, kind of like a truck going down the street or a skateboard or something like that. And in their mind, that action saved them. That's the tactical action, saved them. And then that becomes the number one program. And the second time it happens, they do it again and they experiment around. And then the third time it becomes a pattern. So that's already created as a pattern in 3 times. And they see the pattern and the direction that it'll go. And so they become emboldened, and that's their go-to thing as far as tactical response to any stimuli. Okay. Well, that's how dogs learn when they encounter new things. That's how the brain works. It's how you do it too. If you're successful at survival, now to us, survival is, for instance, you go to a job and you mess up and you try something else and it's successful. Okay, then you try to get better at that. That's tactical. So what we're dealing with is an animal that has to experience things new or already experienced and create a pattern of survival in its brain. So if it does something and it gets closer to that response of go away, or I can manipulate it, or come here so that I can take care of it type thing, then that's what they're going to go to. So changing behaviors of dogs means we'll get into that. I'm getting ahead of myself. So that's immediate action. Okay, then we go into new or never before experience. So planned action and timing. So how fast do you plan an action? That's the tactical aspect of as an adult dog, I would know how my body works. I know where my back feet are. I know where my front feet are. I know where my mouth is, my eyes, all of this, my tail, all of that stuff, because I've encountered that in a number of other areas. So I have an ability to say I can run fast, I can jump hard, I can go back, I can do these physical things, I can bark, I can look a certain way. I have certain aspects of neurobiology that creates, that adrenaline rush to then create that dopamine also if I survive that moment. And that feels good. And then I get the endorphins, that high. Okay. And that's what that tactical aspect of that immediate response, if you survive well, that's what it programs in. That's your answer. That is your go-to. And that's how all dogs get their behaviors, frankly. Okay. So a planned action and timing is, if I don't have experience with it before, I have to use what I know about myself to be able to handle it, whatever it is. And so I can jump, I can run, I can go fast, I can bark, I can, move to the side, I can whip around, I can do all these physical and mental things, and the psychological aspect of being a predator, looking like a tough thing, puffing up, and hopefully get a better outcome. So those tactical aspects come out of the predatory mind in that fashion. Now, a feral or fearful dog that's been like, Cassandra, her response, depending on, again, the specific stimuli, may have been to run, hide, cower, run under something, or to frankly attack it to try to get it away from her. Depends on how she sees that level of threat. Okay. So again, goes down to personality and behaviors of that particular dog, how it's going to go. And frankly, a lot of what we do when we're working with a dog is to us test them on how they behave and respond to various stimuli. Am I 2 inches closer to the dog than I was before? How does that dog respond to it? Does it move away? Does it stay the same? Does it come closer to me? Does it move across me? Does it curl away? Does it back up? Does it stop? Does it look at me like, what the heck are you doing? All of these things, those are all the tests of tactics in that moment. Just by me moving, if we're walking together and me moving to the side a couple of inches this way or this way. What happens if I angle this way? Does the dog join me? Does it go off this way? Does it stop? Does it, all of these things, what does it do? Does it respond to me? Does it bite my arm? All those things are giving you answers. And this is the tactics of finding out who that dog is. And that's what I call the 20-second walk. And I think I talked about that months ago. What does that mean? Okay. Then the last thing in that, and the newer things, is what is learned by the dog. And so everything we've talked about to this point has been how that dog sees things, and it learns from its personality, its temperament, how it responds to that stimulus, and whether it was successful or not. So that's what it learns. And it doesn't learn it in the moment. That is just a survival tactic. And that survival tactic, then, if it's successful at surviving, now it processes that afterwards, thinks about it. It's that pause, that processing time that every brain has to have to think about all those permutations and what should I have done? What was different? How could I not be surprised next time? All of those other things. So first time a dog encounters something, it's going to use its senses, smell, eyes, ears, all that stuff, and go, okay, I'm not going to be surprised by that. So what was it that led up to that thing happening that I had to respond in an instant without knowing about it beforehand? So those are the things that talking to another trainer earlier today about a situation with the dog where it got a squirrel under a tree. And now every time it goes to that area, it goes and sits under that tree waiting for another squirrel. That's pattern seeking, and that's what brains always do. So it was successful in that first time of encountering that situation. It was successful at survival to that predator. And so it gets that squirrel, and now every time it comes to that tree, it sits there in that same exact spot that it got the squirrel. So that's the pattern seeking. That was a success, a high level of success for that dog, where nothing had ever happened there like that before. Okay. So now let's talk about strategic aspects. Okay. So that was tactical. Now, strategic is relating to the identification of long-term or overall interests. And you'll get a copy of my notes again, my outline at least. I hope you're taking notes. Relating to the identification of long-term or overall interests, okay, and the means to achieve them. That's strategic aspects. So in other words, carefully designed or planned to serve a particular purpose or advantage. Now that's personality based, it's long-term survival based, and that's the overreaching thing of how everybody, every living thing sees how to encounter its environment. If the environment changes massively, let's think about a dog going from one situation, one household to another. It's an entirely different situation. And so does that match up with what it's learned as a strategic aspect of this is how I survive long term? Here's my plan to be this way. I need to take over, et cetera, et cetera. And then it gets to a situation where that person, that family, that trainer, whatever else goes, you don't need to do that anymore. What massive changes have to happen in that brain for it to give up the old paradigm of its strategy to survive long term? That takes a long time, guys, but it can start now. That's what course 2 was about. It's the application of this type of understanding of behavior and how fast a dog will give up its old paradigm when it doesn't match up with things that this is safer and better. It has to be safer and better than the way they see it, though. It can't be an equal level of threat, just a different arrangement of it. It can't be an equal level of chaos, I will say, to that dog here, where it says, okay, here's my strategy to survive this my lifetime. It has to be a better situation for them that they come into, less chaos, more understanding, more communication, for trust to build. That trust changes the strategic basic of that, which changes, frankly, behaviors and then long-term personality of the dog. I've seen it thousands of times. Okay. So I disagree with those people that, and I won't name names, but it's just about everybody out there that says personalities don't change. They do. Okay. But it has to be a composed, consistent aspect, because most of the time personalities are created under stress. And that stress, just like we'll say an addict of some sort of alcohol, drugs, whatever else, if you put them in an environment that never occurs again, that changes that person. It also changes a dog. Okay. They have to be able to count on it. Now, incidents will happen, tests happen. So this is what this means between tactical and strategic as far as the understanding of those words. Now, so it's strategic based upon personality and temperament of the dog as to the strategic makeup of that dog. Again, based upon what? The environment that it's had to come to this point. So it's learned how to do X by doing this because of this environment. If you put it in an entirely different environment, now it's got to get a new answer, a Y. Okay. And so we can use those elements to change a dog. And that's really what you're doing, rather than teaching a dog sit, stay down, place. You're changing an understanding of that dog, of humans, and the environment they're in. Okay, so so the strategic aspect informs the dog's tactical nature and responses. So in other words, the overriding thing is the strategic understanding of how do I survive long term. The tactics are then has to match up with that strategic aspect. If a dog sees the strategic aspect of I cower in the corner and I crawl under the bed in the bedroom and stay there all day to survive, then all of its tactical aspects are going to be informed by that, by running and hiding. Okay. If it's I survive this by attacking everything that comes around, all of its answers for tactical are going to be based on that strategic understanding of its environment. Does it make sense? I hope I'm not repeating myself. Okay. So strategic is the overriding that comes from, but also leads to personalities and temperaments. And those are based upon a lot of times what happens during their environment in being puppies. And it's either reinforced at certain points or it's not, and they learned something else. So experience modifies responses within the natural makeup. In other words, the strategic makeup and the personality of that dog. So, but experience always modifies it because you're always looking for a better answer to survive. If nothing changes in the environment, which is an impossibility unless you live in a, isolated cage out in the middle of nowhere and food drops down from, heaven, something always changes. So that experience modifies things. Extreme traumatic experiences cause FUD, fear, uncertainty, doubt. So if you don't have any experience in some aspect that comes along, you have either fear, uncertainty, or doubt. Doubt is in yourself. Uncertainty is about the situation. Fear, you can see what that is. You may have a combination of all three, or you may have a single or a combination of two of those things. So the FUD factor, FUD, fear, uncertainty, doubt. That's long-term in my background understanding psychology. So extreme traumatic experiences cause fear, uncertainty, doubt, and a breakdown of strategic certainty and makeup. So when the strategic aspect of the dog is set, which is basically what happens when puppies go from the hormones that we call puppy pheromones, that once those go away and the adult brain starts coming around, it's constantly trying to have a strategic certainty. And so once that's set, if a traumatic experience happens, an extreme experience happens, then the dog, that breaks down its certainty of strategy and its social and its personal makeup. Now you've got a dog that's split between two things, what it understood before and the possibility of a life-ending situation. That's what trauma does to humans. That's what trauma does to dogs. So now you're dealing with with basically a PTSD type of situation in the brain. It has nothing to do with whether it's human or not. The brain itself can't comprehend that trauma. And so you have to help provide answers for that animal, either giving it a stable and safe environment and having that go into the past more and more. You can expect incidents to happen because something will trigger in that brain pattern, a smell, a sound, a something that will bring that brain pattern back, but it fades over time. And I'm going to remind all of you guys, I've had clients, people in the past who they go on the right path. I help them to get on the right path. And then 3 months later down the line, their dog does something and reverts for an incident. And humans get frustrated very quickly, say, okay, I'm starting over because it happened again. No, you aren't starting over unless your brain says, I'm starting over. Instead, it's just one incident in 3 months. What you're looking for is a pattern of behavior that increases that time to 6 months, and then 2 years, and then never for another incident. So don't ever give up with an incident. If you are going down the right path, you reinforce that, and you, in a composed manner, continue to remind the dog, this is better, and you don't have to worry about that stuff anymore by your behavior, by your composure. Okay. So trauma is an unusual thing, but it can occur even once or twice in a lifetime. And if it does, it may be one of those things that the dog simply doesn't understand it, has to incur that again, and it has a personality to be able to handle that it was a one-off. Unfortunately, many of the dogs that we have these days, because of I will say the incidence of breeding with specific breeds and all of that, they don't have the capacity to handle lots of trauma. So, and frankly, humans are kind of like that too these days. So remember my number one rule for humans, suck it up, crybaby. So now in strategic aspect, opposite. So here's what we use: opposite responses than normally encountered before cause reevaluation of strategic understanding. I use opposite responses. When a dog gives me something that I disagree with, a lot of the time, if a dog comes lunging at me and I go, "Hey, buddy," or I don't even, I just go, like that. That's not what the dog has always gotten from humans. So now it's got to stop, reevaluate, because it's not getting what it wanted, which was me to go away or to attack me or whatever else. Instead, I'm nonplussed about it. And that confuses the dog because it's always, that brain has always gotten this response, and it's learned how to do that better and better and harsher and all that stuff to get humans to go away. And I just stand there nonplussed about it and go, yeah, go away, kid, you bother me type thing. It always creates fear, uncertainty, doubt. I don't want to create fear. There's an initial shot of it. They go, whoa, wait a minute. Then they have uncertainty and doubt in themselves. Did I not do it well enough? So they try it harder, and I just laugh because I know I got them then. That's tough for humans to do because all we see is big teeth. But understanding you're working with a brain. And so to affect that brain better, I want to give them an opposite response on what they've always gotten, because now it causes them to stop, pause, and think. And that's where I want them to be, so they can learn something new. And all I'm looking for is an increment that much to be along the lines to be better pro-social rather than antisocial. So all I'm doing is piecing together these little tiny increments with each incident with that dog. And as each one of these incidents grows, it does this. And it increases in, slow, out, fast. That's what I'm looking for. Because the processing time initially from their strategic paradigm of what they've come to get to this strategic aspect, that's going to take a while. But they see what I'm doing as I'm teaching them. Each little increment is getting better, and I agree with it. And the more I agree and am happy for you, the more I focus on yes, the more they give it to you, because the brain focuses and gives you what you focus on. So I want more and more and more yes. And then the dog buys in because it's doing the action. I'm not forcing it to do those things. I can physically agree and prevent that, me from being attacked, but I'm not doing harshness to the dog. Again, I go back to a few times ago, I talked about the threat of action is more powerful than action itself, because the threat of action causes that fear, uncertainty, doubt. It causes you to stop and think. Whereas physical action, if I can prevent doing the physical action and simply indicate a potential threat, then that's the unknown. And the unknown is what is feared by you, by dogs, by everything. So by me presenting myself in a way that I will come at you, but I'm giving you an out. And that's where I talked about this. I'm giving you an out. What's the out? What are you going to take? What's the answer? And if you give me the right answer, then all is forgiven, so to speak. It's over. And then the dog learns, oh, if I give this response, and that's all I'm looking for is that little tiny response, all the pressure's off, all the threat goes away. The dog learns. If I went and physically grabbed and attacked the dog, what would the dog learn? Nothing in that moment. It would learn after it processes to be better at attacking me first, or that it has to totally submit to me because I'm physically stronger, faster. I do weird things with my hands that the dog can't imagine. Okay. So which way do you want the dog to learn? Now, don't go try this without professional help. uh, and this is again, if you're working with a predator, with a dog, with an animal that can harm you, and you work with dogs that have that capability or that predilection, this is where I recommend taking something serious like a martial art that allows you to, not about hurting, but about you gaining the skills, the speed, the capabilities, the control of yourself and your own body, and frankly, your own composure long term. It really, really helps, guys. It's how I've been able to do things that I'm still alive. So anyway, okay. So the opposite responses are very important. Okay. Now, how does this affect their language and their behavior, the effects of tactical and strategic aspects? Okay. That is it just as their strategy affects their tactics, strategy and tactics is in their language. That's how they communicate. Okay. Now, first of all, dog is a predator. It's a top predator. It knows it's a top predator because that's its role in nature. It knows it because it is that. It's not, it doesn't have to think that. So the genetics of that animal coming down from, approximately 38 to 41 million years ago being a canine, that canine line, that's what it is. It's a predator. And so the predator, so let's talk about predator effects on a predator. So in other words, thinking like a predator, being a predator, and how that animal behaves, okay? So when you say, well, that's kind of silly because isn't that what it is? Yeah, but there's also prey effects on a predator. If the predator thinks it's prey, and it is a predator, meaning it knows what happens to it from being prey, because it is a predator and they know what happens when you're a predator on prey. That's a different mindset. So the fearful dogs, the fearful, aggressive dogs are very hard because they know what's going to happen to them. They have set in their mind, if I'm prey, if I feel weakened through, for instance, SSRIs, Prozac, dogs feel weak, so that actually preemptively strike to protect themselves. 98% of the dogs that came into me with SSRIs, I didn't need them. It caused more problems because dogs don't know they're being drugged. They just know they feel weak. So as a predator, if they feel like prey, they're going to lash out harder because they have to protect themselves and against what they know will be their death in their minds. A predator on being a predator and thinking like a predator now, it's all about tactics and strategies. That's survival. So that affects everything they do. That affects their behavior, their language, how they move, all of those things. Okay, so let's look at that. So first of all, tactical positioning. So what is tactical positioning? To the front. If they're in front, they're in front of, if here, or if they're in front of you. If they're in front of you, tactically, they're in charge. You're out of the question. They're the ones making the decisions, unless you teach a dog to take information from behind, from you. Most sled dogs naturally do that. Other dogs don't. But again, you have to teach the sled dogs that you are worthy of being followed. I'll put it that way. Okay. So front position, side position, back position, those are entirely different things. Say you're walking with a dog. A dog is in front versus a dog's to the side versus a dog is in back. Now think about that tactically for that dog. What does this mean? What is that telling you about that dog? What's it telling you? What's it communicating to you? A dog in back of you is in a we'll call it in human terms subordinate position, but it's also it may be fearful from the standpoint of it's looking out, it's trusting you, but it may also not trust you, kind of like the way Barney was the first 15 minutes. He lagged behind me and then he muzzle punched me in the back of the leg to test if I was going to run or not. So there's a lot of there's a lot of different situations that behind, well, okay, that's also a tactic and strategy to get at prey or to test you. But it's also, if you have a relationship with this dog, it's showing you it's uncertain about the situation. So just where it places itself naturally tells you a lot about the personality and the brain of that dog. Okay. So front, side, back. Up has meaning. Up is a tactical advantage. That's why I don't let dogs up on furnishings, on me, or anything else inside of a house. Because the house is the inner den. That's the private area for just us, just this pack. That's it. That's the way they look at it. That's the way they think about it. So I can ask a dog to go up on something outside. Environmental agility. I do it all the time. Get up there. You have a better advantage of seeing. You also have a tactical advantage of jumping down on top of something. So you can make that. It's harder to get up on something to attack than it is to be on top. That's true with military aspects. That's true with all sorts of things, guys. So up has meaning. And for my clients, the first thing I always told them was 4 paws on the floor. It's not going to hurt your dog's feelings. Trust me. You must enforce that. And if you have a great relationship with your dogs and you let your dogs up and there's no problems, that's fine until another dog comes in and sees that and disagrees with it. Now you may have a dog fight. And that's the situations I always went into with clients. And it's usually they let the little dog up on the couch or on them, and the big dog wasn't allowed. And guess what? The big dog goes, no, I disagree. I'm not going to let that dog have tactical advantage over me. And I don't see it as above me, literally and figuratively, in the pack. So I'm going to attack it and kill it. I disagree. And then the big dog gets in trouble when they're the ones that did it. Okay. So up has a great deal of meaning. It's also, for instance, the dog we had, the German Shepherd dog, that was a fearful, got out of a puppy mill type of dog just a few months before. You couldn't ask her up on things. She did not want to get up, period. It took days for her before she would even get up on a low level, anything, because she was terrified of getting up and being seen, because you make a great silhouette. So here's a predatory mind being prey. She didn't want to become prey and noted up on top of here so that she would be a target. I learned that 50 years ago, or more than 50 years ago. You don't stand on a ridge top because you make a great target. Boom. So you stay below the ridge top. And but predators that never had that type of situation happen, the ones that feel that they are top dog, so to speak, they'll jump up there no problem. So down is another area, tactical positioning. To not be seen could be tactic for attacking something else. See dogs crawling slowly like this, coming up in prey. They don't want to be seen. They're trying to be slow so they don't spook. So speed has tactical advantages and disadvantages. Sound, all of these different things, that's all tactical positioning. Distance has meaning. And I think I've gone over some of that. I certainly go over it in RBBM classes. So distance has meaning. The further from, the less the threat, both on your part and whatever that stimulus is. And you find that distance that that dog reacts, for instance, and you say, okay, well, we're going to work on cycling back and forth to get closer to this without you reacting. You can't be constantly moving ahead because then the dog predicts it and explodes at one point. You break its trust. It's not the dog doing it, it's you working that way. Okay. So distance has meaning, but it also is made up from, and again, this is tactical positioning, not movement, position. So distance, what distance are you from that? Locking is a tactical position. Bosch does that with me every day. When we go out, we go to quick trip to go get coffee first thing in the morning. Okay. And he'll position himself between me and other people to block them from getting to me. He naturally does it. I agreed with it. And that's what he does. So he will block people's position towards me. Now, that's a natural thing for resource guarding, what we would consider resource guarding. But in his job as a service animal, he's actually protecting me and my position and my space from other people. And I agree with that. He doesn't resource guard anything else. So depends on what you agree with, how you agree with it, etc., and the training involved. Okay. But blocking is certainly a natural behavior in tactical positioning. Paws up is another one. So in other words, those front paws up on you, something, a log, anything else is a tactical position. It's to either reach you, show that it's an equal, a dominant position. There's all sorts of things. Buck was a huge Siberian Husky male, but he was probably part wolf. And first time I met him, they told me he would put his paws up on my shoulders and stare at me in the face. He was my height. So he did. That's the first thing when I walked in, and he puts his paws up, and I go, good boy, good paws up, buddy. And he looks at me like, huh? Nobody's ever done that before. Opposite response. So it's tactical position for him to show dominance, stare at the human, and he always got what he wants, which was people backing up. Instead, I was happy about it. And then I asked him to come do it again. Hey, paws up, buddy. And he goes, okay. And I go, yeah. And he gives a big smile on his face. I say, off. And he's already off. So let's do it to the wall. Paws up. Puts his paws up on the wall. Yeah, buddy. And I'm patting him all upside, and this is a dog that bit, and I have no idea how many people. He never put paws up on a human again because what happened? I used a different opposite response. I was happy about it. He didn't get an advantage from that. What he got was better outcome because I communicated to him in a way no one else had, and he agreed with it. So, and how did I know to do that? Seemed like the right idea at the time. Again, based on experience, lots of experience. Okay, so paws up is one. Muzzle positioning. Where do you put that muzzle? How do you put that muzzle? Do you rotate it? Do you show? Do you show teeth? Do you look at? Do you put it to the side? What's that tactical advantage in that positioning for what's coming up? So muzzle position is huge in where they have you ever touched a dog, even accidentally behind, and it whips around real quick, get that muzzle towards you. That's the business end. Okay. So it's telling you something. And that's what you got to learn what that is. Tail positioning. Now there's books out there about tails and what it means and what height and all that stuff. But tail positioning and tactical position, they don't want their tail grabbed torn off or anything else, because that's a lever on them. So what they do is they'll move it away from that potential threat. So if you see a dog, for instance, kind of walking around you and its tail away from you, be really careful. If its tail's toward you, it's trying to relate to you and is saying, I'm not a threat. So there's lots of things about tails. I could do a whole thing on tails. Okay. Height of head. Is it a lower position? Is it a low neutral? Is it a higher neutral, or is it a high position? Is it back? Is it forward? Is it down? Is it angled? All of those things, that height of head, those are all tactical positions, and they tell you what's in the brain of the dog in that moment. They're talking to you, whether you know it or not. Is the dog touching you? Is the dog leaning against you? Two different things. Okay. A touch may be I'll give you an example on Bosch. People will be standing there at the coffee counter. I'll be standing over here. He's between us. He sits down, he backs up, and he's able to touch people's foot to know where they are tactically. He's facing me. He's not facing them. He's saying, I'm not a threat, but I'm keeping track of you. If you move, I know you're going to move. I know you're moving. So he pushes up against their foot. He's a pretty interesting dog. He's about the smartest dog. Now, I'll say he's the second smartest dog out of about 10,000 that I've ever worked with or had or known. He's pretty amazing to watch. So touching is one thing, leaning against is an entire other. So touching is checking in, all of those other things. Leaning against can be needy from their standpoint, depending on the personality of the dog and the situation, or it can be a pushy ownership aspect, I'll put it that way. Okay. Laying down, there's a number of ways dogs lay down. So that's going to tell you, and those are all tactical positions too. If a dog's comfortable, it's not worried about the incident or the situation, the tactical positioning, it feels comfortable and safe, but it's, there's other ways that they lay down that they're ready to pop up, and I've gone over that before. Okay, so that's tactical positioning. Now let's talk about tactical movement. So forward movement, I just call it predatory action. Because if you are, even if you're fearful and you're moving forward, why are you moving forward in a fearful situation? Because your predatory mind is saying, I need to show I will attack you. I will attack that thing, whatever it is. I'm seeking it out. I'm uncertain about it, whatever, or I am absolutely certain about it and I'm going after it. So movement forward, there's thousands of layers of things, but forward, you can simplify for yourself as predatory action, predatory brain, moving. Okay. Backwards, moving back. You are in an uncertain mode and pray. Now, this is tactical positioning and movement. Okay. I ask dogs to back up or to back out of something, and they will. That's different. So that's a captured behavior that I work with all dogs on that. Okay. So parallel tactical movement. So in other words, you're moving with or an object to the side and it moves parallel to that, or a human or another dog moving parallel to each other. Okay. That's a partnership, even in a short. Let's talk about that just for a second. I know I don't have a lot of time left, and I've got more to cover as usual. So in a parallel action, you are agreeing, this dog is agreeing to be your partner for at least that moment. And that's a test. It's a test of, do I trust you? I'm giving you trust. Are you going to betray that? Are you going to break that trust? And humans are always in their own brain and don't understand what this means. That's part of the language. These are tests. Okay. And so if you step this way and the dog goes, whoops, like this, okay, you broke my trust. or it stays there and it goes, no, you're being rude. I'm staying here and you get out of the way. So there's tons of things going on there. Okay. So parallel is a momentary aspect of do we go together? Do I trust you? Are you my partner in survival? And humans don't get that most of the time. Angles inward. So in other words, is this dog angling inward toward you, towards an object or whatever else, not going straight. That's forward movement, but angling. That's tactical movement, because as it looks like you're going past, you are getting closer. And so at that close point, you've got a tactical advantage, especially if this doesn't rotate, or if it's a dog and it stays here. Now you've got the side of the dog. Okay. So angles away, not a direct run away, but, and this is, I take these angles all the time because it gives me the opportunity to come closer or get further away without looking like predator or prey at a dog. So I'm always taking angles at it rather than going directly or away from it as predator prey, unless I mean to go, hey, stop that. Break your brain from what you're thinking right now, because I disagree with it, because I'm coming at you as a predator. Okay. And the last thing I want to do is go directly away from a predator and become prey. So I will not. So curling around, and we talked about that. So this type of thing. So again, depends. Are they trying to relate to you and show you they're not a threat, or are they trying to gain a tactical advantage around you? Okay. And that's all based upon other things and elements, but those are tactical movements. Curving away. So it's going like this. I have to stay where my peripheral vision, if I'm here and this dog is here and it starts curling away, it's not running away as prey. It is not taking an angle where very shortly I am out of their peripheral vision. It's curling so that as it goes away, now it's over here finally instead of here, where I'm out of peripheral vision. So it has more distance curling away from me before it loses sight of me. Okay. So curling or curving away is another tactical movement on dog's part. Going to cover. So going behind a chair, behind a bush, behind a rock, whatever else, anything like that is cover, defilade, okay, what we call defilade. And cover gives you a break, a breather. If you're that animal and you go behind cover, it gives you a breather, a time, a pause to think, to evaluate again, rather than being in a stressful moment. It also provides, when you're in partnership, it also provides, okay, I've covered this side, I've got this, I understand this, there's no threat over here, there's no prey, and you've got that side. So in a partnership, in a conflict situation, that animal going behind something is going, okay, I don't like what's going on. I need a break, I need distance, and I need something between me because I don't trust the situation, or I don't trust you. Okay. Elevation changes, not just up but down as well. And that elevation change allows for time between two things, two animals, you and a dog or another dog or whatever else. That change of elevation, it takes more time to get down there. So this animal has more time to respond appropriately. In other words, more time to think and more time to get that tactic, pull it out of their brain and figure out how to do this. Okay. Herding is another aspect. So herding from the standpoint of, we'll say chasing, singling out prey, or moving a group entirely together. And whenever I'm in classes with Bosch, for instance, some of the advanced classes, and Bosch is the only dog there during most of the time, as an example. And someone decides, we're walking. I see it. We're walking, somewhere, and someone decides to go off on their own, even a few feet away. Bosch will go down and start herding them back. So he is a shepherd, German shepherd, that is. Okay, speed has meaning. Slower than your normal pace is stalking, predatory, or prey aspect. So it's uncertainty or it's certainty about becoming predator or prey. So be careful when you're using a slower pace than your normal pace, because dogs study you all the time. But you can also use it to your advantage. When you slow down, the dog notices and it's going, okay, what's going on? Now, if you're staring at that dog, it's going, uh-oh, I just became prey and you're the predator. What does that mean? If you're staring at something else, then the dog's stare goes, what are you looking at? Because the predatory mind goes, okay, we just became partners in being predators. So there's lots of things that you can do. When you speed up, that excites a dog, or if you're coming at it, you become an immediate threat. Or, so there's a number of factors with speed. Be careful on how you see speed and how you use speed. Okay. And remember that a dog's pace, a normal dog, we'll say normal size, medium to large dog, husky, German shepherd, uh, you know, golden retriever sized dog. Their natural pace is about 2 to 2.5 times our speed of our normal walk. So when you're walking with a dog at a normal human pace, you're doing a death march with the dog and it's bored to tears, which is why it wants to do all these other things. Okay. Pausing. So a pause in action and behavior and all these things. First of all, when you're communicating directly with a dog, okay, in other words, you stare at it, you do something, move forward. I'm going to pause because I'm going to wait to see the response of the dog. That's a communication. That's a conversation. If I don't care what the dog has to say to me and I force it to do something, that's not a conversation. And there's no need to pause, and people do that all the time. They don't pause enough, in other words, because they're not having a conversation with the dog. They're not allowing the dog to own what its response is. You can guide a dog easily to a better outcome and better response if you will pause and then agree or disagree with that. So that's what we teach in these advanced classes. But pausing is all contextual, but that's tactical movement too, guys. All this is all in the concept of tactical movement. Leaning against as you're moving, that's pushing, for instance. Bumping, that's another, so contact in movement, in other words. So the bumps, the hip or shoulder bumps, as soon as I feel a dog do that to me, my knee is going out. I'm just bumping them back. It's like, nope, you don't do that to me. Because that's a reminder of, hey, I'm above you in my mind. I'm going, no, you're not. I'm bigger and better than you. So stepping across the front of you. How many clients do you say, oh, my dog trips me up all the time? Because it's not that the dog is being rude or you are out of its positioning understanding. It's that it's showing you you're lesser and you need to move out of the way. You don't count in certain ways. So that's stepping across in front. And then there's the swimming movement, the back and forth. That can be used to advantage. That's what Bosch does to me when I'm moving. He's behind me. We're walking, and he's behind me most all the time when we're walking. And he's swimming back and forth because of his tactical understanding of his environmental awareness. Everybody that came up to me at conference, people I didn't know, trainers, they noticed how he moved with me. Some of the guys asked, "Is he a protection dog? Because that's the most beautiful thing we've ever seen." I said, "Well, in a manner of speaking, yes, he's a service animal and he is situationally aware." Rick Alto said, "That's the most situationally aware dog I've ever seen in my life." I said, "Me too." He's exceptional. And he's aware of the entire surrounding. He's not fearful, he's aware of it. So he's looking at that from that standpoint. Okay. So last thing here, sorry. So category 3 here, encountered before but unpracticed or uncertain of outcome. So this is about strategy and tactics, guys. So in other words, the patterns of trust are not yet set. So you've encountered it before, but it's been unpracticed or uncertain of any outcome. So in other words, you may have been at a distance from it and seen it, or you encountered it and it went away by itself by happenstance. So patterns of trust are not yet set. The major other factors involved that are different than other times. You may think that it's the same thing because it's happened before, but it's a different setting altogether. Different smells, sounds, location. It's next to a street instead of in the backyard. That's all massively different to a dog and how it responds to that. So it doesn't know. It hasn't encountered that actual aspect before. So don't assume that because a dog has practiced something in a building that it knows how to do that in a different environment. Proof behaviors don't prove a performance. Performance is you training a dog to do X in a certain location and it performs perfectly. You didn't give the opportunity for the dog to do it elsewhere to associate as a generality. Okay. So the other aspect of that is risk assessment. So the risk assessment is it's unpracticed, uncertain of outcome, but it has to assess what level of risk is this. And then what's the risk tolerance levels of that dog? Because every dog has a different risk tolerance level. Some are very low risk tolerance and they respond and react poorly. Others have a very high level and just go, yeah, I don't care. Okay. And then you have cognitive versus associative learning encounter. Is it cognitive? Do they have to think and figure it out themselves? Or is it associative that they observed others encounter this situation and seen what the results are? So cognitive being based upon before and the most likely outcome based upon learned responses, or is it associative observing others' outcomes? And dogs are very smart at associative learning. Okay, that's their major thing. They observe others and other encounters, and they extrapolate from that what will happen with them if they're in that situation. Okay, so that's what, and you know, the language aspect. That's 5 of these things. Okay, there's 5 of these stocks. I can't even begin to get into that tonight, but the tactical and strategic advantages of things. Up has meaning, speed has meaning. All of these things have meaning, guys. And you need to be focused and aware of that whenever you're with dogs and think about it in those terms, because that's a predator and that's what it sees as survival in tactics and strategies. Okay. So I hope that helps a little bit. I hope it clears up a few things. I hope I didn't confuse you more. and have a good night. I haven't gone over by too far. So
That was great information. Thank you.
thank you guys. I appreciate you all. All right. You have a good evening. I'll end this here, and again, the recording will be shortly, and I will send my notes on my outline to Angela now, because I usually just finish up the outline right before we start this. So there you go. So I can't send it out before. All right, we will see you guys. Oh, don't let me forget. Hang on a second. We have another question and answer Zoom that's coming up November 29th. That's Wednesday, November 29th. So if you have questions of any of the past ones, I think the past 4 that we haven't had a Q&A session, So the past four, including this one, if you have any questions, send them to Angela in a written format. She'll group them together on categories, and I will try to answer as many as I can in an hour and a quarter or so.
Yes,
Angela?
the past four are give the dog, well, tactical and strategy, what we did tonight. Give the dog a way out, the vomeronasal organ, and licking. And I do already have a list started because I have some questions have been submitted. So submit away and I will get them added.
Okay. And then our next live is December 20th, Wednesday, December 20th, and that is contrast is clarity.
Yep.
That's huge in their language. Okay.
Very.
Okay. All right, guys. Thank you very much. Appreciate
Peace
you
out.
all.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.
Thank you.